And now, here in front of you will come someone who doesn't need any presentation. He's known all over the world. Please applause for Dr. Malone.
We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
The vaccines are safe. I promise you, they are safe and effective. They are safe and effective.
If anyone chooses to not get vaccinated, there will be consequences.
welcome you from the International Crisis Summit. On behalf of the organizers, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the meeting of the 4th International COVID Summit. I know that many of you traveled a long distance to attend, while others have come from across Europe and from here in Romania. The organizers thank you, all of you, for your commitment, time, and courage to participate. But we wish to thank the members of the Romanian government who are providing both this beautiful venue and their generous support. Now I'm asked to remind all presenters to stay within your allotted time. Please keep in mind that both the portrait and the spirit of Vlad the Impaler is here in this building, and we do not wish to have to call on him to enforce timelines. It seems simultaneously just yesterday and also a long time ago that the first International COVID Summit was convened in Rome, Italy, by invitation from a member of the Senate. So many things have changed since then. At that meeting, attendees were only allowed to speak about drug treatments, not about vaccine risks or effectiveness. This was the first major international meeting where physicians and scientists came together from across the world to compare notes and discuss successful ways to treat COVID and virtually eliminate hospitalization and death with a variety of early treatment protocols. The second ICS then followed in France and included discussion of masks, lockdowns, treatments, as well as vaccine concerns, and was also a great success. The third ICS convened recently at the European Parliament in Brussels, and video from that provided testimony has been viewed literally billions of times. With your help and support, I have no doubt that the fourth ICS will be another step forward in helping both Romania and the world make sense of what we have all experienced and point the way forward towards a better future for all of us. Now my introductory address. Friends, Romanians, physicians, lend me your ears. I come not to praise the top-down, authoritarian, centralized regulation of medicine endorsed by the mandarins of finance, governments, globalist organizations, and massive non-governmental organizations, but rather to bury it. It has now been 4 full years since a novel coronavirus first infected the human community. Laboratory engineered for enhanced human infectivity and disease, development of which was funded by the US government and performed by the US medical industrial complex working in cooperation with the Chinese Communist Party. Let's consider the most recent findings regarding the damage done by this top-down centralized approach. Skilled data scientists, including Dr. Jessica Rose here today, have recently estimated that excess United States deaths associated with the combination of non-pharmaceutical interventions and imposed medical interventions, which were neither safe nor effective, exceeded 500,000 US citizens. 500,000 excess avoidable deaths because of government top-down policies. Propagandists in the US government and CIA-influenced Johns Hopkins University tell us that there have been approximately 1 million US deaths from disease associated with the Wuhan seafood market virus infection, the initial name given to this pathogen. These propagandists, in cooperation with a modeling team led by Dr. Neil Ferguson from the Imperial College in the UK, have repeatedly told us that the case fatality rate of COVID-19 disease is 3.4%. This case fatality rate has been weaponized to justify jamming various drugs and, quote, vaccines through a highly abbreviated and corrupt, quote, emergency use authorization regulatory process, and then imposing these products, which have since proven to be neither safe nor effective, onto medical practitioners and the general public. These experimental products have been imposed in a centralized, top-down manner by a combination of censorship, psychological warfare propaganda, perverse financial incentives, suppression of bottom-up medical treatments developed and field-tested by practicing medical professionals, and targeted harassment and weaponization of the medical licensure process to attack and prevent any who have raised scientific and medical concerns from practicing medicine or participating in valid scientific discussions. In stark contrast to these centralized authoritarian policies, data from Sweden, a country which had refused to mandate these top-down policies and which has been repeatedly ridiculed for not following these centralized globalist-endorsed policies, demonstrates a SARS-CoV-2 case fatality rate of approximately 0.026%, not the 3.4% coincidentally used in both the original fall 2019 Hopkins CIA Gates Agenda 201 pandemic wargaming, as well as in the biased modeling results of the Neil Ferguson Imperial College modeling, 0.026% as opposed to 3.4%. Taking the actual Swedish data into consideration, skills data analysts have estimated the actual total U.S. death from COVID disease at 171,000, not 1 million. Let's take a moment to consider the history and current data concerning the recently emergency use authorized, quote, booster products. There is no medical emergency at this time. The incidence of both disease and death associated with COVID-19 has essentially reached baseline. This is worldwide. The declaration of medical emergency in the United States was formally terminated in May 2023. These products were designed based on advice from the FDA VRBPAC committee, which last summer predicted that the SARS-CoV-2 strain dominating the upcoming fall season now would be the fearsomely named Kraken isolate. By the time these products were ready to be jammed through FDA regulatory authorization, the Kraken variant had been made extinct by the Eris variant, which was more infectious, less susceptible to antibody neutralization, and was associated with clinical symptoms, per the CDC, virtually indistinguishable from the common cold. Confronting the paradox of vaccine strain mismatch between Kraken and Eris, FDA and CDC relied on immunized mouse serum samples and an unvalidated serum neutralization test to assert that the Kraken boosters were sufficiently cross-reactive to the Eris variant, without actually sharing the data and analyses with external reviewers, to justify authorization and marketing this product to infants, children, adolescents, and adults. Just a short period after introduction of these products, a government-coordinated propaganda campaign in the United States has resulted in a total of 7% uptake of these products in U.S. adults and 2 to 3% uptake in the pediatric population. By the way, I call that a win. Now, under the selection pressure associated with global administration of these leaky vaccine products, we see evolution of a newly dominant variant, HV.1. This variant now paradoxically incorporates an element or epitope from the distant Delta strain and is highly resistant to neutralizing antibodies. There are no data indicating that HV.1 is neutralized by antibodies elicited by the current Kraken booster. What this history demonstrates is that the modified mRNA vaccine platform, even with an FDA willing to bypass safety and efficacy norms, developed over decades of experience, and willing to jam products through a regulatory authorization process using, quote, emergency use authorization, still cannot keep up with a rapidly evolving RNA respiratory virus, which, as predicted, has become both more highly infectious and relatively non-pathogenic. The centralized authoritarian global response to the entry of this engineered virus into the human population 4 years ago has clearly been an abysmal failure. Now let's consider the latest information about this technology and the purity of the vaccine products. When confronted by reporters from Trial Site News and Epoch Times, the FDA has resorted to stonewalling. The FDA has issued a categorical denial of adulteration and risk, stating that, quote, no safety concerns related to the sequence of or amount of residual DNA in these, quote, vaccine products has been identified. The claim that the FDA is required to take any of the authorized or approved mRNA COVID-19 vaccines off the market is false, according to the FDA. With over 1 billion doses of the mRNA vaccines administered, no safety concerns relating to the sequence of or amount of residual DNA have been identified. With regard to the FDA-approved mRNA vaccines, available scientific evidence supports the conclusion they are safe and effective. This is the position of the FDA and, by the way, the European Medicines Agency and Health Canada. In contrast, multiple Moderna U.S. patents disclose that Moderna is aware of the genotoxicity risks of DNA when delivered into patients by highly active non-viral lipid nanoparticle delivery systems, and these risks include the risk of genotoxicity, resulting in, I'm quoting from Moderna's patents, quote, problems including the possibility of insertional mutagenesis, which could lead to the activation of oncogenes or the inhibition of tumor suppressor genes. That's Moderna's own words. In contrast to the perverse, obscene tragedy associated with this centralized top-down approach, which has been endorsed and promoted by the mandarins of finance governments, globalist organizations, and massive non-governmental organizations, today you will hear presentations and testimony from physicians and scientists, today and tomorrow, demonstrating that the traditional bottom-up approach of focusing on treatment of symptoms by repurposing the existing pharmacopoeia to prevent disease and death from a highly inflammatory respiratory virus was far superior to the centralized top-down approach. If nothing else, due in large part to those with courage to speak scientific and medical truth to power, the world is increasingly becoming aware that the propaganda of the COVID crisis and the centralized top-down approach has been a fraud. In attempting to weaponize this fraud for a variety of purposes, including financial, we have all been subjected to the most amazing, centralized, and globalized propaganda and psychological warfare campaign in modern history. Going forward, we're emerging into a postmodern, surrealistic information landscape where truth has become subject to a postmodern golden rule. Those with the gold make the rules. Permitted truth, quote unquote, has become entirely subjective, a distorted narrative propagated by public-private partnerships. People here in Romania understand what that means. They understand fascism, and they understand authoritarian, totalitarian governments, if anybody does. Between public-private partnerships, between governments, NGO, and the intelligence community, and corporate media. This is a mockingbird campaign. We have seen the modern embodiment of Operation Mockingbird, which has been in operation in the United States intelligence community since 1942. This is our opponent. Medical freedom and personal autonomy is certainly important, but even more important is freedom and personal sovereignty. When governments are willing and able to deploy modern cyber capabilities on their citizens, then election integrity becomes almost completely moot. And we are all at risk of becoming functionally lobotomized, indentured servants rather than independent individuals empowered to pursue our own destiny. Now, allow me just a brief additional moment to survey the published peer-reviewed literature relating to the human medical damages or adverse events associated with these products. I prepared, together with Dr. Jill Glasspool-Malone, and curated a list of over 750 published peer-reviewed academic papers describing COVID genetic vaccine-related adverse events. Dr. Trozzi has prepared a similar list with over 1,000 peer-reviewed references, which can be found on his website. The list of published adverse event types stands in stark contrast to the list of over 6,000 published and curated peer-reviewed publications which focus on how to overcome vaccine hesitancy. 1,000 on adverse events, over 6,000 basically on propaganda coming from academia. The adverse event publications fall into the following broad categories: coagulopathy or blood clotting problems, immune issues, autoimmunity, Guillain-Barré syndrome, myopericarditis, non-stroke neurologic disease, ocular disease of the eyes, other adverse events, including death, reproductive issues, rhabdomyolysis, this is destruction of muscle, stroke, tachycardia, rapid heartbeat, thrombocytopenia, reduced blood platelets, which contributes to the clotting problems, tinnitus, ringing in the ears, one of the most common adverse events, and transverse myelitis. This is damage to the spinal cord that causes paralysis below that level. It is past time to resist and bury these centralized, totalitarian, authoritarian policies which are being deployed to advance corporatist, globalist interests. And defense of medical freedom is a pretty good place to start. In closing, never forget the wisdom of St. Augustine. The truth is like a lion, and you do not need to defend it. Set it free, and it will defend itself. So be a lion, not a victim. Thank you for your time.